There is comfort in repetitive movement. A yogi would say, I am practicing yoga. Perfection is never the goal. The process and what we learn about ourselves along the way is what matters. Stitching is like that. We carefully select our fabric, choose just the right floss, and we gather our tools, the scissors and needles. Then we take a seat in our favorite chair and begin to stitch. The needle goes into the fabric and comes back out. It goes in and comes back out. Stitch by stitch, we make beauty and find comfort as we stitch. You should let your FlossTube friends see how handsome you are, Archie. Look, say hi to your FlossTube friend. Such a good boy. You're going to yawn for them like you always do? There. Good boy. Hi, FlossTube friends. How's everybody doing? Good to see you guys today. My name is Jackie, and that was Archie. If you've been here before, you know both of us. If you haven't, welcome to my FlossTube called Comfort Stitching. This is a video all about cross stitch and the other things that I get up to, different crafts that I do or different things that I'm interested in. And sometimes it's some different things that I'm interested in that I choose to share with you all. So thank you. If you're new today, welcome. If you're a regular viewer, regular subscriber, welcome back. Today is Saturday, August 2nd. 2025. Can you believe we're in August already? And like I said, FlossTube number 20. Hard for me to believe all of that. August, FlossTube 20. Thank you again for being here. I am coming to you from my apartment in small town Weston, Missouri, which is a little town northwest of Kansas City in northwest Missouri. Today, this happens to be an absolutely gorgeous day in my little neck of the woods. We've had a break in the 90+ degree heat and probably 90+% humidity that we've had. Oh my gosh. The weather has felt like when you step out in it, you're going to just immediately start growing mold. It's been that humid. But we had a front go through, and we're actually just above 80 degrees today, and the humidity has decided to get on out of here. The breeze is coming from the northwest, and this is my perfect kind of weather. Now, I doubt it's going to stick around because it's just August, and we always have a bunch of, still fairly warm weather to go, but I am willing to accept this for what it is, just a gift, because I know that a lot of you are not experiencing this. So again, my heart goes out to all of you who are either suffering from an out of this world earthquake that happened last week. There was a tsunami that went. I had a friend who was in Hawaii when that hit. She had a hard time getting back to the mainland, so thankfully she's here and people are recovering from that. I know that there are fires all throughout Canada. We're actually getting some of the smoke as far south as down here from that, and probably going farther south. So there's fires. I know just north of some friends of mine who are in Taos, New Mexico, just north of there was flooding this week. So Mother Nature has a lot left to put us through this year. She's putting us through our paces. So anyway, if you are in comfortable, beautiful weather like me, wonderful. If you're not, this too shall pass is how it goes. Sometimes harder than others. But anyway, I am thinking about all of you who might be having difficult times right now. So I want to start out, as I always do, just saying thank you. Thank you for a lot of things. Being here, coming back time after time. I know that we have a lot of options for FlossTubes to watch. Nearly on a daily basis, certainly a weekly basis, people are getting the bug and the inspiration to sit down in front of their cameras or their phones and do this same thing. So you have a lot of options, and there are a lot of fantastic FlossTubes out there. So for those of you who keep coming back time after time, liking, subscribing, letting me know you've been by leaving comments, I really, really appreciate you. And after the last video, I had so many great comments from our little conversation that we had at the end of that. I mean, you had comments, a lot of different comments to offer from the whole video. But, you know, when I sit down to talk to you, I know pretty much what I'm going to say, but I don't always know how it's going to come out. And at the end of that, when we were talking about a book that I had been exposed to called Craft Psychology, and then how I was interpreting the information that I was hearing about it, and interviews with the author, and just how I'm taking the information in, how it was applicable to me, and how I thought it might apply to you, and then how I kind of interpreted that and put it into a story about how important it is that we take care of ourselves and what it means to be available to other people, to show up for them, be witness to what's going on with them, and especially just to see them no matter what was going on. I mean, you guys had such wonderful things to share about how that impacted you. And I just want to thank you for continuing to show up for me, to see me, and accept me and the things that I choose to share with you. So just really thank you from the bottom of my heart for what you bring to this conversation that we have here. So I want to look at my notes briefly because I have a few things to obviously share with you today. The usual FlossTube content. Again, if this is your first time here, we usually just talk about what we're working on. Those of us who do these videos, we talk about what we're working on, what we might be inspired by, what we have finished, what we might have started. And I've got kind of all of that to share with you today, as well as a little bit of haul or some inventory and stash enhancement, and then some plans. And so along those lines, I'm going to start just with a little update. Because last video, I failed to kind of give you an update about a gathering that I'm hosting in August next month that I call Stitch With Me at Flora Legion. And it's really, if you say stitch with me, you stitch with me, like me stitch with you. I'm stitching with you too. But anyway, this will be the third one of these that I've hosted at a shop in the town where I live, Weston, Missouri. The shop is called Flora Legion, and it's going to be August 23rd. I announced that a couple of videos ago, and within a matter of days of me talking about that event was full. Now that's not like, woo, you filled it up, Jackie. There's room for 24 people. And it is kind of, woo, you filled it up, Jackie. I had no idea that many people would want to come and stitch with me, but you come to stitch with each other too. And so that event is full. If you're coming, you know it. I kind of, in the comments of that video, I told you that you were on the list. And I also have a little bit of a wait list. So I think I have about 4 names of people who really want to come. So if you were somebody who said you wanted to come, you're on my list, but you've now had to make other plans, if you would please let me know, because like I said, I have a wait list. There are some other people who want to come, and I can reach out to them and let them know. But if you are coming, I'm really looking forward to seeing you. We're going to have a great time. In the past, we've just done this over the course of an afternoon, but Gretchen and Fred are going to open the shop early that day. Gretchen and Fred are the owners and proprietors. Say that 3 times fast. They own the shop Flora Legion, and they're going to open, we'll start at 10 in the morning and run throughout the day, just till about 5. The shop closes at 5. Now we will have snacks available. We'll have drinks, but you will be on your own for your lunch. Now, if you want to bring something with you, there is a refrigerator. You could put that in, but there are also plenty of dining options in Weston, and every place in Weston has carry out. So we won't go hungry. I'm just going to say that. And there are plenty of options, whether you have special dietary needs or whatever. We got you covered here. So I wanted to get that out of the way. I wish I could open this up to as many people as wanted to come that we had space, but we are limited on the space that we have. So anyway, that's that. So August 23rd is that next Stitch With Me day at Flora Legion, and I'm really looking forward to seeing you. I want you all to bring something that you've worked on. Like I don't know that we have room for a brag table. We might in one of the other rooms in Flora Legion have a table we could put stuff, but please do bring 1 or 2 things that you're working on, or 3 or 4 or 5, I don't care. We're gonna have plenty of time to talk with each other that day and share, and I would love to see some of the things you do. You get to see what I do every time I sit down in front of the camera, but I would love to see some of the stuff that you do. Maybe I've seen it already on Instagram or other social media, but I would love for you to bring stuff if you're coming. So let's just share and have fun sharing our love of this hobby of stitching. So that out of the way, I want to move on to what have I been stitching? What you been stitching, Jackie? I actually have a finish today. I've got progress on 1, 2, 3, 4 things, and I have a new start. And so I'm going to share all of that. And I know, a lot of people on FlossTube are doing WIP parades right now. You guys see my primary WIPs every time I sit down. I have a few things kitted other than this. I do have a couple of other things started other than what you'll be seeing today, but I don't necessarily think it's worthwhile showing you those because what you're seeing is really what I'm working on. And I was watching Anna from Stitch Roadies this morning. I like to watch her with my morning coffee when she has a new video, but she was kind of talking about the same thing. It's like, do you like WIP parades? Do you not like WIP parades? She was asking people in her comments to let her know if she should do one. And, it seemed about 50-50. Some people like them because they find them inspiring, and other people don't like them because they're either makes them feel inadequate or bored or just like, oh, seen it. You've been working on these things and showing us these things repeatedly, so I don't need to see it again. So, but I have like 5 or 6 things that I'm working on. And I pretty much touch them nearly from the 3 weeks between videos. So you're really seeing my WIP parade every time I sit down. And if I have something else to show you, I will kind of throw it in as we go along. So I'm not inclined to do a specific WIP parade because it happens every 3 weeks here as we sit down and talk. So anyway, let's go ahead and get started today. Let me show you what I finished. This is a stitch along that I've been working on with Sarah from the channel Sew Me Sarah, and I hope you're all followers of Sarah. We have been working on a chart together called Barbara Anna's 4 Seasons, and I have what has now become a pretty well-worn color photograph, but this is the pattern. These 4 seasonal girls, and we started with the winter one back at the winter solstice. We've kind of broken this down that we're starting the girls and working on them throughout the actual seasons of the year. So we started at the winter solstice with the winter. We did the spring girl during the spring season, this sort of official spring season. We are now in the summer season. We started her on the beginning of the summer, and then we have yet to get to fall. But I've already finished the summer girl. I don't know how I zipped through this so fast, because the other two that I've done have taken me pretty much the whole time. But the Summer Girl, she just stitched up really quickly. So here she is. Here she is. That is Barbara Anna's Summer Girl. I just love how she turned out. Now I'm stitching my girls on some different colored backgrounds. This one I stitched, you saw her last time when I started. She's on the same piece of linen that the Spring Girl is on, which is a piece of linen that I got from my friend Marie at Swan Bay Fabrics. And this is 40 count. It's called Mary's Sampler. It does have a kind of a buttery yellow quality to it, but isn't she pretty? These are pretty much the called for colors with a couple of exceptions. I did change up just a couple of things so that I would have a little more contrast. Like the light blue called for color was a lot lighter than that, and on this yellow it just wasn't showing up. So I pull out my DMC color swatch chart and I pull the called for color. I don't have it on the ring. These are the DMCs for most all of the girls. I don't have that one on the ring, but I pull out the called for color and then I kind of lay it down on my DMC chart and just kind of go down the blues, and I look at what is like a slightly darker version of the color, in this case darker, or a different color or whatever if I was doing a color conversion on something. But I just look at what's similar to the called for, but you know, what fits with what I need it to do, which in this case I needed a light blue that was slightly darker than what was called for, and that would work on this fabric and with the other colors. It's a lot of juggling parts, but anyway, that's how I do a color conversion. I just look for what works. And so that's my Summer Girl, and I love how she turned out. I know Sarah, I don't think has finished hers yet. Sarah and I have chatted about this before, that those strawberries are orange. And I nearly changed the color on those, but truthfully, of all the reds that are available in my DMC floss boxes, I couldn't find one that worked better than this. And quite honestly, when you put this darker, it's a brown floss that is the called for that goes with it, it kind of takes on a more red quality than orange. So I just left it. That's my summer Barbara Anna girl. And so you've seen spring and summer, they're both on the same piece. My winter girl, I put on a dark blue, so that's her. And then the autumn girl, one of my sisters asked, what am I gonna do her on? The autumn girl, I have another piece of linen selected. It is a picture this plus linen called Velt. And it's a gold, but obviously it has some green in it, which I just thought this was a perfect color for autumn, for that transition into fall. And the autumn girl, here's a more close-up picture, has a lot of rust, and I just think that she'll look great on PTP Velt when I get around to that. All of them are that I'm doing are 40 count linen. I'm using one floss thread over 2 linen threads. And that's how I stitch most of my projects. I stitch on 40 count linen and higher. I rarely stitch on lower counts, just because I like to use one floss thread. And I know on 36 count you can use one thread, but personally I'm not a fan of how one thread on 36 looks. So I'm a 40 count or above girl with my stitching. And there's still time if you have been watching all along and you want to join Sarah and I for our stitch along. We do have a hashtag on Instagram. It is the BA4 seasons Sal, S-A-L. And I've been seeing some of you have finished all 4 of the girls already. One person on Instagram shared, she's got hers finished and framed and hanging on her wall. Oh, excuse me. And they're just all looking so good. I just love that we have inspired you to do this along with us. And this is my first time hosting a stitch along and really participating in one. I was participating in another one in a Facebook group that I'm in, but I have fallen off of that one. And I just got to where I wasn't necessarily enjoying that one so much and have decided not to continue with it. But I'm glad I've had the experience of a stitch along, and who knows, I may be involved in one in the future. It's been a fun process. But I have certain things that I just like to work on. And for me, a stitch along, I mean, I know that's why some people do start alongs, not necessarily stitch alongs, because you find other things you get interested in and you move away from your stitch along or don't continue with it. And so basically you start along, and that's good too. But this one I'm keeping up. I mean, I'm hosting it, so I guess I should. But anyway, if you want to join us, please do. Let us see what you're doing on Instagram by tagging both Sarah and I. I know Sarah loves seeing what you're doing too. I always put the information on how to tag us and what the stitch along hashtag is and everything is in the description box below this video. And that chart is only available as a PDF download from Barbara Anna's Ko-Fi shop. So there'll be information on how you could get that too. If you've been seeing it as I've been working on it and have now decided you want to work on it too, or maybe you do it in the future and just want to go grab that chart now. It's not a freebie, but it's not terribly expensive either. But I'll put that information in the description box below this video as well. So that's my finish on the Barbara Anna Summer Girl. I want to next show you a sampler that I have really been enjoying working on. And this one I usually show you last, but I want to show it to you, a work in progress. I'm going to show it to you first because there's been a big announcement about it this week. I have been working on, and you've seen this many times, a sampler by Cross Stitch Antiques called Julia Rachel de la Mare. And so I got a little note on here so I remember the details. This is the sampler. And up until yesterday, August 1st, up until yesterday, this was not available to the general public. But it is now available for you. For all of you guys who have been patiently waiting, chomping at the bit for Julia, Kathleen Littleton now has it available on her website, and it will soon be available through the Needlework Marketplace for other retailers to start getting and stocking. But Kathleen said it's on her website, which is crossstitchantiques.com. And she has a few kits. I didn't go look this morning to see if she has any kits left, but she was kitting it as well as just having the booklets available on her website. So that is just such great news. People have been so patient, and so many people who got this. It was a club kit that was exclusive to Country Sampler in Spring Green, Wisconsin for the last year. And I'm not a member of the club. It's called the Threads of History Club. I'm not a member of that, but I was able to get one of the kits after all of the club member kits were distributed, and the Country Sampler had some. And that's probably how many of you have gotten or seen the kits that are out there, the people out there who have been working on it so far, either club members or people who got kits that Country Sampler had. So that is the Julia chart. Now let me show you how mine has come along. I continue to really enjoy working on this one. She's my main squeeze, and here she is. Let me make sure I'm getting her in the screen. Sitting behind Julie here, I can't see what you're seeing, but since I've seen you last, I got this big bouquet of flowers done. That's what I worked on in the time since we've seen each other last. And I'm going to tell you, that was a bear. We'll just say that was a bear to do, because it's so many color changes, but of course, well worth it in the grand scheme of things with how beautiful this looks. So I feel like I'm way more than halfway done now. I'm going to be winding down on her. You know, you can tell when you get over a hump. I'm not one of those people who have computer programs or work in that to tell me how many stitches I've got or what percentage of completion I'm at. I can just tell as I'm working on it that I'm now over halfway done. It just feels like I'm more on the home stretch. Looking at the color, that is kind of a good representation of the color of the fabric right there. This is being stitched on a 40 count linen. It was a special edition Mason linen that's very close to the called for linen, which is called Antique Button Box, medium dark. This linen was given to me by my friend Ray Niles of Cross Stitch Antiques. She had this piece and knew that I was interested in trying out Mason linen and that I really wanted the called for color for this sampler, because I had started it on the linen that was provided in my kit and I wasn't crazy about the linen that I got. I wanted something that just, you know, was darker and gave more contrast. So let me show you those flowers close up. Fold this all up. Aren't they pretty? I'm just loving how this is coming out. Now, if this is your first time seeing this, you won't know that I've been doing my own color conversion on this sampler too. I kind of like what I talked about with the Barbara Anna piece. I had the called for colors, of course, came with the kit that I got from Country Sampler. And then I have a picture of the antique sampler on my phone. The one that's on the cover is, the resolution of it is not, I guess, perfect. I'll say I can't really blow it up and look at detail, but I happened to find a photograph on the internet of the antique sampler, and I could blow that up. And as I was looking at that, and of course, you know, when we look at a chart, we respond to something about it. And for me, Kathleen always puts antiques on her cover. I really responded to everything about this, the color of it, the colors of it. There was, of course, because it's an antique, there's a patina that it shows. I mean, there's just a vibe that it's giving off that when I was working with the called for floss and the linen that was provided, I wasn't feeling the same vibe coming from what I was working with, which is why I chose to restart it on a darker fabric, but also why I've been working with my own conversion. And I've got a lot of threads in my hand here. These are the called for threads as well as the threads that I've been using in my own conversion. I've coffee dyed a few. I've completely changed a few to other colors that I felt like looked like the picture on my phone more. And it's been a tedious, well, not tedious because I've had fun with it, I'll just say a more time-consuming process maybe than some people might actually enjoy. Because when I'm working on a motif, and even a small portion of a motif, I'm looking at the picture on my phone. I'm pulling the color that the chart calls for, or the one maybe that I've replaced that color previously in the chart. And if I feel like that floss is going to work in the motif I'm working in, then I will use it. But if it's like, well, it's kind of different, then I might pull a different floss for that area. So I'm really customizing this project. And Archie's letting me know that somebody has come into the building. I think he'll stop. That might have just been a delivery person. But anyway, so my process has been really to look at the details very closely before I take stitches, and I've changed quite a few things. So I have shared my color conversion with a few people who've reached out to me because it has been so detailed. If it's something you're interested in, I'm happy to share what I've been doing, but I'm not going to bore y'all with the details by going through them here. Just know that I've changed a lot of stuff, and that's how I'm getting what I'm getting. But I've really enjoyed a lot the process that this whole sampler has been for me. I am a process stitcher. Of course, I like the finished product, but I really enjoy the process, whatever it is. And generally, I have found that I like to customize the stuff that I'm working on in some way, shape, or form. So, and I'm pleased that I can. I have enough supplies now. I've got enough stash of threads in, like I have a good collection of all of the major overdyed flosses, Weeks, Classic Colorworks, Gentle Arts sampler threads. I've collected a good variety of color and cotton threads, and I'm still adding to the ones that I have of those. I have been accumulating a few overdyed silks now for about 3 or 4 projects. And then I don't have a full set of DMC, but I've got a lot of DMC floss. So with all of those, I've got a pretty good collection of floss for if I want to change floss colors on something, make a conversion. And I know not everybody's comfortable doing that. I am. I like to have a lot of options. And you'd be surprised at how many times I still don't have just the exact right color. And I wish that I had more threads. So just as a for instance, there's this one DMC color. I have to finally put my glasses on. Usually I have to put them on far earlier. This one DMC color called 950 that I'm using. It's a very light kind of dusty pink. I've used it in several places in these flowers. I mean, it's obviously just one of the lightest ones. But a new start that I've got, I was thinking it might work in. So I went and bought a new skein because this one's obviously almost out. And this is an old one. I mean, I can tell by my handwriting on it. And it's an older bobbin. I can tell that I've had this one for quite a while. I started stitching in the 80s and 90s like most of you. So this has probably been around since then. But anyway, I knew I wasn't going to have enough of this to do the project or to use in the project that I started. And I went and bought a new skein of it. And when I put the two of them next to each other, the new one is a different color. And I thought, oh no, this is the color that I want. So I pulled all of my pinkish flosses out of my closet, all the different brands. Nobody else makes this color. So I thought, now what am I going to do? Thankfully, some of the ladies in my Friday night Zoom stitch group that I do all have pretty deep DMC stashes. So I reached out to them, and a couple of them have some old skeins. So they're going to send me some, and hopefully one will match. But anyway, That's the problem of having a pretty critical eye for color, is that you need the one that's just right. And it's sometimes I can be satisfied with second best, but honestly, if I know that there's one out there that's perfect, I'm gonna try and find that one. So it's just me being picky. But in the end, I'm far happier with my result than if I had settled for second best. So anyway, let me once again show you Julia Rachel de la Mare, and I'm so excited for you all now who have been waiting to stitch her. And I guess I could apologize for not ironing, but I just don't iron until I'm completely done with a project. But she's so pretty. And Kathleen put out a video a couple of days ago announcing the release of this chart, and she was talking about Julia. Of course, on the back cover, she writes the history of Julia, and she mentioned, and I had forgotten this, that this was stitched by a girl who was only 8 years old. That always, no matter how many times I hear like Nicola Parkman from Hands Across the Sea or other people who reproduce antique samplers, and they talk about how young these girls were that were stitching these needlework masterpieces, I'm just always blown away that somebody so young could put something so beautiful and in some cases very sophisticated together. I mean, because there's some wacky color combinations in this one, and somehow it just works. It really does. It's just a really beautiful sampler. So I don't blame those of you who've been chomping at the bit to get this, if you want to start it right away. Now I know the mason linen is hard to come by, and Kathleen has a couple of recommendations as options for you. One of them I think was a fox and rabbit cactus wren. And then the fabric that was in the kits was a needle and flax linen Hemingway, is also one that Kathleen is recommending. And then, like I said, the called for is button box medium dark. So if you can get your hands on something that's a little darker, I really feel like a darker linen enhances these colors, sets them off well. But if darker linen is not your jam and you want to do something different, I mean, it's up to you. Make that sampler your own. That's one of the things that has been really, having somebody give me permission to do that, because I grew up in a stitching world where you just followed the directions that the chart gave you. So once I realized I can make this my own, make any piece of needlework I'm doing my own, whether it's historic reproduction or something contemporary like the Barbara Anna pieces, make it your own, make yourself happy as you're working on these things, because we spend a lot of time with them. We put a lot of ourselves into them, and enjoy what you're doing. And if you're not enjoying it, don't be afraid to stop, and maybe you abandon it. Maybe you just put it aside for a while, and later on when you come back to it, maybe it has a different level of interest for you. But enjoy your stitching. Stitching should be fun. So that's Julia Rachel de la Mare, 1849 by Cross Stitch Antiques. Go get you one if you've been waiting. All right. Now, in my last video, once again, I was expressing frustration about stitching with Auvera 103 silks. And once again, y'all came through for me with giving me a lot of helpful hints, many of which I had already tried, because I started a sampler using those back in 2024 in, June last year is when I started this sampler. And So I've been using 103 silks now for over a year, and I have never been using them without having some level of frustration. So I had gotten to the point that I wasn't even wanting to work on this project that I'm working on. And y'all came through for me with now what I think is going to be a viable option for helping me work on that with them without experiencing a lot of knots. I think what's going on, each of us have our own stitching style. I'm a stab, poke and stab, or whatever you want to call it, one-handed. I hold a hoop in one hand and I stitch with the other. I think what's happening is 103 silk threads, for those of you who maybe never use them, they are just one strand and it's twisted. The way it's manufactured, it has a twist to it. I think what's happening is that we all do, we have a twist that our wrists make or our fingers make as we stitch. And I think the twist that my hands make is the exact opposite to this. And yes, I have tried the other end of the silk first, or the, you know, if you run your fingers on it, you can feel one direction is smoother than the other. And I've tried it both ways. Nothing, that didn't work. It didn't make a difference to me experiencing knots. Different people suggested using the eye of the needle to come up from the bottom. I'm working on 56 count linen with this project. Sending the eye of the needle up was abrading the thread that was through the eye of the needle too much on 56 count for my taste. I was having to use very short pieces of silk in order to use that method. I felt like I was wasting thread, and these are not cheap, so I just felt like that was a waste. And somebody finally mentioned, and I had tried this before actually, but somebody mentioned a thread conditioner called Thread Heaven. I had this. This is an old one. Again, this is probably 30 years old. I had this for hand sewing. I had tried this at one time when I was stitching with the silk, and I felt like it didn't make all that much difference, but I thought, okay, I'm going to try it again because some people were talking about beeswax. I did try that. I actually didn't like the wax that I had changed the color of my silk a little bit. It looked darker to me. Your mileage may vary, so don't take just my word that beeswax affects the color of things. It just looked that way to me. Anyway, so I pulled out my little thing of Thread Heaven. It's still good after all these years. There's still, I don't know what it's made from, but it's still there. And I decided to really condition the heck out of this floss. I ran it through this like 3 or 4 times, then ran my fingers down the length of it if there was any residue, which there wasn't, but I just didn't want to have any residue. And then I started stitching and it worked. I still have got a couple of knots, but this worked. So now with all that said, let me show you what what it worked on. It worked on a chart that I've been doing called Antoinette, 1894 to 1896. It's a big red alphabet sampler, as you can see. This is from a German company called European Reproduction Samplers. And it's just a gorgeous collection of alphabets, which I love alphabets. So, wrangle my piece of fabric. Here is my Antoinette. I'm going to slowly move it across the screen so you can see it. Tip it towards the window so you get good light on it. And so last time we talked, I had gotten pretty much down to here done. And since we've seen each other, I put in these little teeny weeny alphabets and numbers over here on this side. And then all of these guys without many knots. I'm so happy I finally have what feels like a good workable solution now. Because when you're fighting your materials, it doesn't make for a very fun project. And I knew I was really enjoying what I had been able to do, but it had just become, the knots had just started to prevent me from even wanting to pick this up. So I'm so glad that I'm doing this. This is, like I said, 56 count fabric. This is the one and only thing I have going on 56 count. So it's one strand of this red, which is in the color 664. It's a really gorgeous, brilliant red. And I'm starting to see the spool through this. I've used 2 spools so far. 2 are empty. A third, I'm starting to see the spool here. So I've got more. I have no idea how many this is gonna take. And thankfully, I've got 3 more in the bag too. So I should have plenty for this. But thankfully this is a color that I don't think the dye lot changes really. So if I do end up needing more, I will be able to get those and be able to continue with this project. But I'm not averse to if the color were to shift. This is a reproduction of an antique. Thread colors shift with exposure to light in the antiques, and they look antique-y, which nothing is consistent on an antique. So I would be okay if I had to shift colors ever so slightly with this one. I wouldn't mind. And actually the fact of the matter, the antiquiness was, I'm looking at Julia here. Why I was feeling like making the conversion that I was making, because when I look at the photograph of the antique of Julia, from one side of the antique to the other, you can tell there was different light exposure. The way that the sun affected the color, you knew from one side to the other was the same, but they were different. And the antique, the patina, was different. And I just really wanted to recreate that. I find it really interesting and fun to make something that's new look like it's old. And I've done it with some of the other things that I've made over the course of my lifetime. I just find that a fun challenge. So when I'm stitching, I don't mind if something is variegated or dirty looking or looks old. This is pretty clean looking. It could look grungier for my taste, but it is what it is. I'm enjoying stitching now with the silk on beautiful Antoinette. Let me show you that again. I want to make sure I'm holding things long enough. It's always a dilemma. What's long enough? What's too long? When do you start getting bored and say, oh, I wish you would take that down? But I think it's worth admiring our stitching. We spend a lot of time with it. And maybe you're seeing this for the first time and you're thinking, wow, could I ever do something like that? I can assure you, you could. Could you stitch on 56 count? If you don't have severe eye issues, you probably could. So people wonder, how can I see something that small? I wear contact lenses. I've worn glasses since I was in the 5th grade, so I wear contacts. These are readers, and I have a magnifying glass too. That's how I'm doing this. That's how I'm able, and I find it fun. So it might not be everybody's thing, but again, if it's fun, why not do it? I'm not hurting anybody, so why not? Enjoy it. So Antoinette, 1894 to 1896, European reproduction samplers. I always put the information for this chart, how you can get it, down below, because it's not one that's available at retailers that I'm aware of. I think you have to order that one, but it's well worth ordering. It's such a gorgeous sampler. So thank you to the person who commented on last video and said thread heaven. I think anymore it's blue with a silver lid. This one is one of the old ones. Sometimes you can even still find these on the secondary market. It didn't dry out, so I think you'd be good to get one if you do find it, or in somebody's sewing box that you find at a garage sale. Check it out. It might still, it might still be good. All right. Next, I'm going to move on. We're going to talk about Quaker samplers. So I have two that I'm going to show you, because one is one I've been working on. You've seen it many times. And the other one is a new start, but they all fall under the category of Quaker samplers. Now, the one I've been working on for a while is this one right here. It's called the Beatrix Potter Sampler by a company called Stitchy Box. And this is a reproduction of an antique sampler that hung in Beatrix Potter's Hilltop House. Beatrix herself did not make this, but she had it, and it still sometimes is on display at Hilltop House. And it's out of my tomato bag from Stitch Folk. I am working this one on 46 count fabric. So let me show you. Most of this you've seen, you saw the last time. I haven't made a ton of progress, but I want to show it to you because it will give context, I think, to what I started. So here's my progress on this one. I haven't quite made it to the bottom on that left side yet. I think I'm like one motif away from the bottom. And I've only worked on this one time since I saw you last. I was working on it last night with my Zoom ladies, and I did that motif there that has the bird in. You can see I didn't complete it yet. But these are all being done in, it's not monochromatic, but it kind of is. I just pulled threads from Stash for this, all in a kind of old gold family. I've got DMCs, I've got overdyed cottons, I've got a couple of silks, Belsois silk, and Dinky Dyes silk. And so anyway, that's all the colors I'm using on that. And they're all playing well together. I really like the variety that they're giving me. And I think they look really good together. The called for color was kind of a coral, soft coral red, but I love fall colors. Fall is my favorite season. You'll hear me say that a lot as we get closer to fall. But I'm loving those colors and enjoying that sampler. But I had, I've been kind of collecting since I started this one. On the very last day of 2024, I started that Beatrix Potter Quaker. I've been talking about Quaker samplers. I've been learning about Quaker samplers, and I've been acquiring some other Quaker sampler charts. And I've learned that as much as we all have come to know this kind of geometric medallion style of sampler as a Quaker, there are other styles of samplers that Quakers made also. So a new start that I had was also a Quaker chart that is in a different style. And I've had it for a while, and it's just been kind of calling to me to start. And I've heard other stitchers say that. It's just like, oh, it's calling to me to work on. It's calling to me to start. This one was calling to me to start. So I decided to start it. And this one is called Ragamuffin 2. It's a Quaker sampler by Shakespeare's Peddler. It's this one right here. And I started that this week. And here is my start. Last time we talked, I had gotten color and cotton threads to add to my stash, and I had gotten the color that I used for those letters. And I have really enjoyed working on this a few nights this week. This is a 40 count linen. It's a picture of this plus linen called Vellum. It does have a slight bit of modeling in it that has a bit of like a soft blue-green. There's some brown in it. But I thought it really complemented the colors in this sampler well. And I'm kind of doing my own conversion of this and kind of following the suggested colors, but also Country Sampler, again up in Spring Green, had a conversion for this too. And I did not get this chart there, but one of my sisters bought this at Country Sampler a couple of years ago when we were shopping there together, and she had the Country Sampler conversion, so she shared that with me. And so I just took inspiration from that and then have kind of come up with what will be my own conversion for this. And so right now, the only colors that I have settled on are what I'm using in the border and for the lettering. I started this on the 30th of July this week, and these are the colors that I'm using so far. I'm not sure why that one's in there. We shall see. But mustard seed, that's a called for. The green in the border is this color and cotton one called Garden Sage, and it really looks like Garden Sage. I wish it were slightly bluer, but it's a really beautiful light color. There's a darker green that's called for in the chart, which when I pulled it, it just seemed really glaringly dark. So I changed that. More blue in this than is coming across. Juniper by Weeks is what I'm going to use for that darker green. Then the lettering is this color and cotton color. It's a warm black called Galena. And it looks like I just have a couple of others here on this that I'm considering for some variation. But those are the ones I'm using so far. And then here are some of the others that are either the called for or my options for those. And I'll make those choices and decisions as I get farther down. You can see in a lot of these motifs down here, there's a variety of colors. There's a lot of motifs in here that are very ghosty. Let me take this out of the plastic. This is just a color copy. I think I downloaded this chart as a PDF. I'm just trying to protect my color copy, but there are lots of things in here that are very ghosty. And I'm probably not going to follow that. I'm going to change those things a little bit. And one of the things that I'm going to definitely change are the berries. In that border, you can see there are some white ones. And that's actually where I'm considering using that DMC floss color that I was thinking about earlier, or telling you about earlier, that was the different dye lot. And I think that'll work because there's some red in here. and it just shows up here. And I'd like to bring something reddish into the rest of the sampler. So I think I'm going to use that rosy, light, pale color. But I don't know yet. I want to wait and get a little bit more done. So you might look at this and think, well, why is that a Quaker sampler? Well, first of all, let me read you the information that Teresa from Kitten Stitcher, Shakespeare's Peddler, provides with this. I'm just going to read what's on the back because I think it's informative, and then we'll talk more. Quaker samplers have been so popular for at least a decade now, and this was copyrighted 2012, so she's talking 10 years prior to 2012, so we can add, you know, at least 10 more and 15 more years onto that. Quaker samplers have been so popular for at least a decade now. I'm late to the game because I never thought I could afford a Quaker. I found this one on eBay for just a few $100s because the poor thing was in tough shape. But I can see through a few cosmetic issues to the inherent beauty of the original. And I must say, this one was fun to reproduce. I call this a Ragamuffin because the original is in tough shape. The sampler itself is remarkably clean. In fact, it's a little too clean. And I think the alphabets up at the top fell out the last time the sampler was framed. I think in the paper chart, there was a photograph on the back of the antique, because I know I've seen a picture where she did a close-up of those letters that just kind of started to disintegrate. Someone thought they'd clean her up a little bit. Those black alphabets are stitched with thread that is delicate due to the ingredients used to make the dye, so I bet you those alphabets just fell out in the water. I can only imagine how horrified someone must have been when that happened. That would be awful, awful. This one just needed some tender, loving care and a little patience to sketch out how she might have looked when she was whole. The pictures on the cover of this pattern show the newly stitched model against the original. So yeah, behind, and you can't really see the degradation. So behind this framed photograph is the actual antique, but I know I've seen a picture of those letters where it kind of showed some thread loss. Anyway, the pictures on the cover of this pattern show the newly stitched model against the original with its missing letters. I used a few tricks to work out how the sampler may have been originally stitched. I looked at the sampler and noticed that the sampler stitcher did not like to waste space. She stitched her alphabets all the way to the edge. So I decided she must have done the same with the missing alphabets. She also used little lines to fill in spaces on the last row of alphabets. So I used those same lines in the row of numbers. So you can see here, if Teresa was filling out the design here, there's just some design like borders that fill in space. So around the numbers, she added those two. That must have been missing in the washing accident. And she says that she called a sampler expert friend of hers, who is Pat Ryan from R&R Reproductions. And Pat looked at pictures of the original and gave Teresa some advice about what might have been in the missing area at the top of the antique. And then flipping through magazine articles and books in her library gave her some ideas for what might also go into the missing area, which Teresa knew she wanted to use a script style alphabet at the top, and that was based on her research of antiques. And I have looked at quite a few antique Quaker samplers, and that script style at the top is frequently on Quaker samplers. So while this is not a true reproduction because the whole sampler wasn't there, it's an interpretation that she made of how the sampler may have looked. And she goes on to say that she loves the juxtaposition of the dark angular lettering and the more free-flowing and whimsical motifs that inhabit the bottom of the sampler. Classic Quaker motifs abound. In fact, the wreath, birds, a swan, and basket and flowers. So there's the wreath at the center with initials in it. I'm gonna find, I know there's a swan in here. Oh, that's one of the ghosty things. There is a swan right there above my middle finger. Wreath swan. Birds. There are two birds facing each other there. Again, ghosty things. Baskets. Baskets, baskets, baskets. There's berry baskets. And then the flower sprays. They're all actually traditional sampler motifs, but motifs used in Quaker samplers as well. But again, not what we're used to when we think about the more common Quaker sampler, which is the medallion style. So she goes on to say that the border is so simple, and I agree with her, simple, and then she says, and lovely, and I would agree with her. Because I've just stitched a little bit of it, and I'm really enjoying this so far. When I was researching Quaker samplers, when I first started the Beatrix Potter one, I remember telling you that I happened on a video from the channel Fiber Talk with Gary Parr, and he had Vonna Pfeiffer on as the guest. And they were talking about Quaker samplers in this particular video. If you want to go back and find it, I would recommend it. It's from December, early December of 2019. But Vonna did a lot of the research that they were sharing in that, and she said that there are 4, and I would say that there is a 5th one, but there are 4 very distinct sampler styles with a 5th that is sort of a combination of the elements that are from the other 4. The first one being a marking sampler, which if you know samplers at all, you know what a marking sampler is. Just the alphabets and numbers, basically. A darning sampler, which is a sampler that has a lot of different stitches that would be used to darn different, amend different fabrics. And then there is a sampler called an extract sampler, which is basically a verse from like a hymn or a poem extracted out of that and then stitched onto a piece of cloth with a border around it, generally. And then there's, of course, the medallion style sampler. And then there's this 5th style, which I think this one falls into, where it's has identifiable Quaker motifs along with the Roman alphabet. And the motifs are usually arranged in an asymmetrical way. Not medallions, though. There's not a medallion in this. And overall, it has a very peaceful quality to it. And when I look at that, that's how that makes me feel. And I think that's why I was so drawn to stitch this one. And that's the way I want my color conversion to feel too. I know when we go about selecting fabric for a project, how do you, if you don't use the called for fabric, which this is definitely not the called for fabric. The called for fabric, which was actually Vintage Light Exemplar by Lakeside. And I had a piece of that, but I just really didn't feel like this sampler belonged on that piece that I had. It needed something light and airy because this has a light, airy quality to it, in my opinion. And so, yeah, I started that one this week. 40 count vellum by Picture This Plus. I really would have liked to do this on 46 count because it would have fit on a fat quarter, but I didn't have a linen of all of the linens that I have in my stash now, and I've acquired a pretty good selection of 46 count and 40 count. Nothing that I had that was 46 looked like this looks. So when I choose a color for linen, I have the floss. I'm looking at the chart, and I lay the floss down onto linen, a floss toss. You've all heard that term. But I'm very attuned to physical sensations that I have when I look at colors together. Sometimes they obviously clash, and it creates a sense of tension within me. It's like my stomach will tense, or I can just feel my inside self goes, oh, no, that's not right. Sometimes it's very obvious, and sometimes it's more subtle. There's just something that's kind of off. So I'm not going to force that. I'm not going to use that. And then sometimes you will lay your floss on a particular linen, and it's almost like there's, for me, an audible or a feeling of an inner sigh. It's just like something just softens inside me and takes a breath. And that's how I felt when I put these threads with this fabric. So I had one other fabric that was a close second to this, and I showed both of them to a friend of mine, and both of us looked at these and that and that one and this, and it was like, really, this was it. This was it. I was kind of forcing the issue with the other linen choice I had, because it was a really interesting modeling on that linen, and I wanted it to feel to me like I felt when I went, ah, with these, ah, like angels. But clearly for this project, this was what was going to work for me. So anyway, that's a long explanation for why I'm doing what I'm doing. I'm really drawn to these Quaker samplers right now. So many of the charts that I've acquired or have been given to me throughout this process of working on the Beatrix Potter one, they're all so beautiful. You know, there's the medallion ones. Can either be monochromatic or multicolored, what's called polychromatic. I've got some charts that are that way. I may do another one. I think I might always, kind of like people always have a red alphabet going on, maybe I'll always have a Quaker one, because there's something so meditative about working on them. And I know other people have said this. The medallions are generally mirrors, like from one side to the other, they're mirror images. So you can kind of, once you've got half of the medallion figured out in your brain, the other half, you kind of know what you're doing. Even though some of them are just halvesies, but even from, if you divide a medallion in half, the one half is a mirror image of the other half. You could fold those in half and they're a mirror. Obviously the medallions aren't, but still there's something very balanced and symmetrical about them. And it just makes you feel good to stitch on them. So anyway, the Shakespeare's Peddler one, I actually had another reason for picking that one up, and that kind of goes to plans, but I'll throw it in here. In October, I'm going to a workshop with Teresa Vonnett of Shakespeare's Peddler down at the Silver Needle in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And I thought, oh, I should take something along of hers because I've got several things of hers. I'm just really drawn to her charts. She has a beautiful design style, and it's something that appeals to me. Many of her things appeal to me. And so I just thought it would be fun to have something started and going that I could take along with me of hers to work on. And so that's what I'm going to work on for a little while. That's actually my stitching. I don't think I told you what this Beatrix Potter one, what I was stitching on. I said it was 46 count. It's become my favorite linen count to stitch on lately, but this color is called Moon Shadow, and it's by Seraphim. Seraphim is actually one of my favorite linens to stitch on too, but Moon Shadow. And then the other one, you can see they're sort of similar. Moon Shadow is a lot warmer. This is Vellum by Picture This Plus. And I know some people talk about Picture This Plus linens as being very tightly woven. I'm not finding it that way, but I think it's probably, it may be, I won't say it is, it may be, because I'm so used to stitching on 46 count and 56 count that this doesn't feel all that different to me. If you're maybe used to stitching on lower count linens or other 40 counts, maybe it seems different, but I don't find it dramatically tightly woven compared to others. I think it's just what you get used to. I do like the modeling on Picture This Plus linens. It's a little more distinct, although hard to see in this particular color. But generally, Picture This Plus linens. Oh, that Velt that I showed you, that Barbara Anna girl that had the green modeling on the gold, that was a Picture This Plus. Generally, their linens have a little more distinctive modeling that's happening on them. But I like it. I like it. I'm happy with the things that I'm working on. So that's my WIP parade today. And move some things out of the way. That one I have in a new bag. I decided to put it in this bag with the birds on that was given to me at Sampler Symposium this year. A gal named Mary S. gave me that. I kept the tag on there. Tried to put my projects into, I'm acquiring a little bit of a collection of project bags, so I'm trying to put my projects into coordinating project bags now. But I still like the simple ones you get at Amazon that kind of look like plastic, like netting almost. They have that kind of checkerboard thing going on. I'm gonna have a mess to sort out when I get done. So the other thing, that was my stitching that I've been working on, but I've been working on a couple of other things too that are one sort of stitching related, actually both. Last week I spent almost all weekend not stitching because I have a couple of charts. Oh, here's one of those bags I was telling you. You know, they've got that texture in them that sort of looks like netting. Anyway, I have a couple of charts that I wanted to make some adjustments to, like maybe change a quote that was on it or alter it, and one I'll show you here. And I have to be in the right mindset to do that kind of thing. And last weekend I was, so I spent nearly all day Saturday working on those. I didn't make a huge lot of progress, but I had a lot of fun. And so I'm a person who likes a paper chart. So I made working copies of the two charts that I was playing with, taped them together, and then I started cutting and taping different things together to try and work out new layouts for a couple of things. And then I realized, oh, I need more photocopies of this alphabet that's right here, so I can move it over here or condense it a little bit so it takes up less space, so I have more room for something over here. So that was that's fun for me. So I like to do that. And then I also worked on, I had shown you this stitching box last time we were together that I got. It's one of the Winterberry plaid boxes that was from Hobby House. I don't think these are available any longer, but you can check. It seems like they find them every now and then in their warehouse. But I started, I'm working on decorating up the inside like so many people do with their Stitchy boxes, and I just started working on it. So, are you ready? Ta-da! Whoops! The needle minder works. I had my scissors grabbed. Look at what I've done. It's not done yet, but so let me walk you through what I did. First of all, I had this little needle book that I showed you when I first showed you the box, that's made out of a felt bookmark. It was a bookmark, and it had a gold tassel hanging from it. There was a button there that I've replaced with a snap. But a lot of people wrote to me and said, "Where'd you get that bookmark?" So here, Mad Woman Annex. I hope that's focusing on Etsy. That's where I got that. Now I did check for a while. It was sold out. I don't know if she's gotten them back in, but if you want to go look up that seller, Mad Woman Annex. Oh, there's a QR code here. If you want to grab that, you can follow that shop and maybe she'll get more in. But you can see I've got needles in there already. I just was playing with it that day, wondering how can I make this into a needle book. I knew I wanted to make a needle book, and I just folded it into thirds. It seemed to just want to do that. And I had a vintage black snap, because I've got, like most of us do, we buy vintage sewing supplies, or you get a sewing box and you've got little orphan snaps and hooks and eyes and stuff. So it's just a black snap that I put where the button was that held on the tassel, and it became a little needle book. It goes with my Scottish themed tartan plaid box. So let me take some things out. I showed you so the theme is just an ode to Scotland, because I love Scotland. So I showed you last time my hair, rabbit scissors, my little Scotty charms. I still haven't figured out how I'm going to put them in. Those are in honor of Archie and my other Scotty Bonnie Rose. So I had this vintage hoop. I think this is a 5-inch one. It actually fits in here, so it's going to stay in there. I showed you this bone awl that I got on Etsy. Somebody wrote and said, what was that for? This is an old antique sewing tool. Not so necessary now, but it has a very sharp point on it. This was good for poking holes in fabric. And if you made corsets and needed to have a hole to start, and then you would use kind of a buttonhole type stitch around the hole to finish it off, you needed one of these. So it's basically just an antique sewing tool, which I'm putting in here with some of the other vintage things that I want to put in here. I found when I was looking through all of my own vintage sewing stuff, this teeny weeny little card with tiny buttons. Those probably are like about 1/8 of an inch, those mother of pearl buttons, so they're going to live in here. I'm just taking all of this out because I wanted to get to show you kind of what I did. I don't know if you have decorated a Stitchy box before, or if you've been thinking about doing one and weren't sure how to do it. So I just got it down to the bare bones now. So this is a needle minder. So let me start just by talking about, so the interior of this, if you've never seen this case before, it was all this same red. And so I put in this background with some quilting cotton I had. I went through all of my quilting cottons to find what worked, and I ended up being very inspired by the colors that are in this tartan. Of course, they just already go with the red, so I was always drawn to that. So that's just a piece of quilting cotton. And how I did that, if you've never done this before, and this is just how I did it. I've seen a few videos where people talk about how they're doing their boxes. So I had some poster board, and I drew around the bottom of the box onto the poster board to make a template, because obviously the lid is going to be the same size. And then because of the elastic here for this pocket, I had to notch the poster board in order to slip it down, because that fabric goes all the way down in there. So I had to notch my poster board to be able to slip it down in there. And then I just laid the poster board down on the fabric and trimmed out a very rough fabric oval that was larger than the poster board. I used spray adhesive to glue the poster board to the fabric, and I sprayed the adhesive on the poster board and then laid that onto the reverse side of the fabric. And then because this is an oval shape, I of course had to notch around my excess fabric so it would lay smoothly up against the edge of that. And then, because I wanted to be able to stick a needle minder on there, there is a bit of magnet that I taped behind the poster board. And what that was I think all of us probably at one time or another have had refrigerator magnets that you might have gotten from like a restaurant or something that are, they're about the size of a business card, like, 2x4 or 2x3. And so that's what's behind that area of this, so that a needle minder can fit there or stick there. And I just use masking tape, and it's taped to the poster board that's behind this. And then because I had such a tight fit on my oval, that's just in there. I didn't glue it in, it's just in there because it's a tight fit and it's snug in there. I don't have to worry about it coming out. So this ruffle is just a bit of silk ribbon that I had left over from another project that I just ran some gathering stitches along the length of it. So it goes, down a ways. I just gathered it up and I glued that to the back of that elastic. And I used little wonder clips to hold that while it's set up. This also is a needle minder. I showed you this last time. It's an old button that I made into a needle minder. And since it was a button, I wanted it to look like a button. So I put some pearl cotton, a couple of strands of pearl cotton I threaded through the hole and glued in there so it would stay. That way I could trim it flush to the back of the button. And I did test it out with a magnet on the back to see if a needle would stick to it, and it does. So even though the button itself is kind of a wood resin, it will actually, you saw when I opened that box, the scissors were stuck to it, so it actually works. And so I just got some of those, magnets. I have two different sizes of those little flat magnets. So that's actually sticking, not to the magnet board in here, but it's sticking in the pocket. So I could feasibly put other needle minders in there, and I may yet. This is a scapular. Thank you to the person who reminded me of that. The word was on the tip of my tongue. I know it's called a scapular, but I couldn't think of it last time when we talked. And then this is just a little strawberry charm that my friend Sarah from Penelope's Pocket sent on one of the bags I have from her. So that's what I've got there for now. And then I'll put some other stuff back in it, but while I still have it open, what I've got here on the tray is just some wool. And this is not affixed in there. This is what the tray looked like. I had this wool that has kind of a houndstooth or tweed pattern in it. And I used the tray this time as my template. I laid it down on a piece of poster board so I had a template and cut it out. And then I had to cut it slightly smaller to fit inside here. So I just, trimmed it down. So I had a template that fit this. And then I marked around that template on my wool. I used one of those water-soluble quilting pens that are light blue. And then I used pinking shears to cut this out because I knew that the wool shouldn't really ravel, nor was it going to be in and out of the box very frequently that I had to worry about raveling. A little piece of something. Listen to the motorcycles in town. It's a perfect day for a drive on a motorcycle, I'm just telling you. And a lot of them come to Weston because it's a great day trip from Kansas City area. Anyway, that just lays in the bottom of the tray. And then all my other stuff can sit on it. And I showed you before, I had this vintage floral spray that I'm gonna pull one of those pansies off for use for something in the bottom. But I just thought they were so pretty in there. Again, all the colors end up coordinating. And then I have this wooden thread winder from Heartstring Samplery. So I've got a puffin, Scottish Terriers, a sheep, a rabbit. I need a good Highland cow tchotchke. I haven't found that yet. So if you have any suggestions, I've seen some cute keychains and some magnets, but I've already got some cute magnets. So I want something with a Highland cow that can go in here. And then down here in the bottom, I haven't worked on my, I showed you this last time, this piece of silk quilt patchwork that I'm gonna do some crazy quilt stitches on. I haven't done that yet, but you can see I also put some fabric in the bottom. And these I can take out. They're not quite, well, maybe they don't want to come out. Not quite as tight a fit down here on the bottom. But I did this in a very similar way that I did, there, I got one out. The top, I just had that same template, poster board template, and I just kind of laid it down in here so I could tell where I needed to trim it, where these side bits were, and then I could cut a piece that would fit in each of those. So you can see that's how the back looks. Again, I just used, it's just quilting fabric that I spray glued the poster board, laid it on the fabric, trimmed it to about the fabric to about a 1/2 inch outside the shape. And then you can kind of see how I notched it so I could fold the edges flush. Glued those down with just some like Aleene's, maybe tacky glue. And they just pop in there. So they're just laying in there, not affixed permanently. Because who knows, I might, I don't know, change it sometime. So I found a couple of other things that I'm going to end up putting in here. When I was at Sampler Symposium, we got Stitchy boxes there too. Some beautiful things that were gifts from Jean Lee. And there was this little ruler that says the Attic Needlework on it that fits down in there. And some of these larger wonder clips. I use these all the time. I put them in my box today, not necessarily to keep them there, but I just thought, if you don't know about these big size ones, I didn't know about them until Jean gave them to us, that there were this large size ones. I had some of the teeny weeny ones that I don't have a lot of use for, but these big ones, what is it, about 2 inches? I am using these a lot now to help wrangle my fabric when I have it in a hoop and I roll up the edge. I don't like a lot of drapey fabric getting in the way of my stitching. So I use those magnetic cable ties. You've seen me show those before. If you follow me on Instagram, you've seen those too. But I am really liking these as an addition to help hold the fabric. So I've got 4 of these, but they will, if I travel and take the Stitchy box, they'll go with me because I use these regularly to help with my fabric. So if you don't know these, big wonder clips, they're great. So anyway, that's the progress on my stitching case so far. And I really love, it sits open on my work table back there, which is really a mess right now because I was working on this last weekend and the stuff I had paper cut up, taped up, the charts and stuff. It's kind of a mess back there. I'm glad you can't see all of it. I hope you're not watching me on an enormous TV. You probably can see what a mess it is. But anyway, that's my stitching box and the things that I wanted to share with you about how that's coming along. And if I can do that, you can too. Anyway, so pretty. I love how the colors are working together. There it is. The other thing I'm contemplating is because I like antiques so much and the interior of this has so much warmness to it, I wish this had a little patina of warmth to it. I'm contemplating. I haven't tried it yet because if I do, there's no going back. But I'm contemplating trying to age this a little bit. And I was talking with my friend Gretchen down at Flora Legium about how I might do that. And I know there is, I'm pretty sure this is real leather. And I was thinking about that teal dresser that I showed you a few videos ago that I did, and I was used antiquing wax on that. And I was wondering if that antiquing wax could be used on this to give it a little patina. And then when I was talking to Gretchen about it, I thought, wow, I wonder if maybe shoe polish could do it too, because, you know, you put shoe polish on leather shoes. So I don't know, I might try it on the bottom a little bit and just see maybe on the edge, and hopefully I could clean it off if it doesn't work. But I'm thinking about that. So anyway, that's my Stitchy box progress. Loving that. Put all this stuff so it doesn't fall over and cause an avalanche here. I do have a little bit of haul to tell you about. Not a huge ton of stuff, but I went ahead and added to my animal cracker collection. I got this one, the chicken called Henny Penny. Like her. I got a couple of linens off of a D-Stash site. There are 2 really good cross-stitch needlework D-Stash sites on Facebook. So if you're not a Facebook person, it's actually worth, you know, being on Facebook just for the D-Stash, because you can get charts and linen and all sorts of things. And there's a couple of ladies who regularly sell nice linens on the D-Stash site. But this first one I got is a, boy, that's coming across gray, 46 count Seraphim in the color called Biscuit. And I pulled some DMCs because I know linen never comes across, and I pulled 3 different colors that this is like. I want to show you though, because it's modeled, it really looks different in different parts of this. And again, this is 46 count, has some very distinct modeling that is kind of gray. So the colors I pulled that this biscuit is sort of like is to the lighter end 738, to the more gold, red gold 437, and then 612. So there are 3 different colors there, but when I look at this linen, I see all of them in there. And I've had different people tell me it's really not looking like this, but in real life it is. I've had different people tell me that they like when I pull the DMCs, so I'll just continue to do that for y'all. there's that one. And then I got a color, another 46 count, called Time, T-H-Y-M-E, Goes By. This is also by Seraphim. Now this one does have a distinct green cast to it. So I pulled, this color is quite close, it's just slightly lighter, 372. Showing you very green, this not so much, but it's just almost impossible to accurately depict linen on camera. When I take pictures for Instagram, like, what happens to the linen? It's just crazy. Does it absorb light? I don't know enough about photography to be able to know what happens, but it really is more like that. Not quite as dark. It's somewhere between that and that. So that's both Seraphim, Time Goes By, and Biscuit. And then lastly, speaking of the D-Stash site, I have now a Scottish sampler. I mentioned when I was showing you this Scottish bag from, again, my friend Sarah, who has a website and channel called Penelope's Pocket. I got this bag from her. She makes really nice project bags. And I got this cute Highland Cow bag from her. And now that I mentioned that I should put a Scottish sampler in there, and I now have one that I got off a D-Stash site. Some of you who are regular watchers of Brenda and the Cereal Starter might know that Brenda has been doing a huge purge and D-Stash of her collection, and her daughter's been selling those for her. I have one of Brenda's cast-offs, and it is a Scottish sampler called Agnes Kerr, 1830. Let's see if I can get it in a glare off. There. It's a multicolored one by Maximum Cross Stitch that had, it was a whole kit. It came with some Roxy, another piece of Evertote's linen, 40 count biscuit, and then there's some Roxy floss that goes with that. So I didn't want to pass up. This was a sampler that I remember seeing Evertote's put out, was it a couple of years ago, maybe? Not an easily visible copyright date. But I think they do a sampler every year, and this might have been 2 years ago. They kit a sampler up. It's a collaboration between the designer for Maximum Cross Stitch, whose name just flew out of my head, and Roxy Floss and Evertotes. And so they kit that up with the linen, the chart, and the floss. And so I got the whole pack. Brenda was de-stashing it, and her loss is my gain. She knows I have it, so she said, I'm glad it's going to somebody who I know and who I know will love doing it. And what I liked about this, let me pull it out of this plastic because I don't know if you'll be able to see it. Again, it's a lot of alphabets. It's obviously a multicolored sampler from all these colors on here. But there's this little girl sitting on a border there. I've seen a couple of finishes of this sampler. Somebody actually stitched her to look like the old storybook character Pippi Longstocking, and I loved that because she does sort of look like Pippi Longstocking. I may do that, I don't know. There's a lot of eyelets on here, some specialty stitches, square stitch. There are some directions in here because of the amount of specialty stitches, some diagrams and stuff for those. But there's also a chart that it's just done in pure cross stitch if you didn't want to do that. So I probably will end up doing a combination maybe of the two. But anyway, that's my Scottish sampler all kitted up. Not a whip yet, but to put in my Highland Cow bag. Make some order out of things here. and check my notes. That's pretty much what I wanted to share with you today. Oh, one thing I wanted to tell you, I completely skipped over it when I was talking about the Quakers. One of you guys who watch me recommended a podcast to me that I've since listened to and I want to pass along. It's a podcast called So What? S-E-W. So What? And excuse me, it's hosted by a gal named Isabella Rosner, who is a curator at the Royal School of Needlework, and she is a historic needlework expert. And at the time this particular episode of the podcast came out, which was this one was from 2021. It was all about Quaker samplers. But at that time, she was working on her PhD about Quaker samplers. So 2021, maybe she's finished that PhD by now, I don't know. But she has studied all sorts of Quaker samplers from the 1700s, so prior to the ones that we generally know about, and found how different they were, colorful and just unusual. And on her website, the So What website or social media page, you can scroll back and find those, what she posted as examples of the samplers that she then talked about in her podcast. And then so she compared and contrasted those early ones to what we now know of as Quaker samplers. It was a really interesting podcast. So I want to thank that one of you out there who recommended that to me. And I've since listened to a couple of other of her podcasts, and I know I will listen to more. Another podcast that I regularly get recommended and I've listened to for a while now, not with regularity do I listen, but it's called Haptic and Hue, and it also is about needlework and the history of needlework. And one episode in particular was really interesting that you might find also enjoyable. It was all about linen and flax and how it's grown and how it impacted the country of Ireland and how it's not necessarily grown much anymore there. But there are some entrepreneurs, some people who are, contemporary people today who are have researched how to grow flax in a way that their ancestors did. And there's a mill there that still processes it and makes linen, and how that process is being reborn to this day. So that was a really cool episode of Haptic and Hue. I don't remember when that one was. The episode of So What about the Quaker samplers, if you're interested, was from May 6th of 2021. The Haptic and Hue one wasn't that old. I think it was still 2025 or very late 2024 if you want to go look for that one. But a couple of really good podcasts. I listen to books on tape when I stitch. I listen to podcasts. I, of course, watch FlossTube. I went over there because the TV's right over there. But I'm always listening to something, and I like it when I can listen to something that really relates to our craft and what it is that we're doing and the materials that we're doing. And if it has something to do with history and our craft, I am all in on that. So I think that's all I have to share today. Plans, I've already kind of talked about that. The Stitch With Me Day, Stitching With You Day, I get to stitch with you, coming up on August 23rd here in Weston. Those of you who are coming, looking forward to seeing you. Again, if you had already come, and I will say confirm because I said you're on the list. If you now know that you're not coming, if you could reach out to me and let me know, because I do have people who want to come, and we have a packed house. I can't fit any more chairs in. So if you're not, we can free up that chair for someone else. But if you're coming, I'm looking forward to seeing you. Hopefully we'll have a really fun day. I can't believe that we wouldn't. And then in October, I've got something coming up. As I said, the Shakespeare's Peddler workshop in Tulsa. And I've always got different irons in the fire. I do have a project. I've alluded to it before that I'm going to be working on with Ray Niles. I'll need to be starting that soon. And part of it I can share, but part of it will have to be secret because it's a secret. But that's coming up. And so that's it for now. I mentioned you all and the wonderful comments I got after the last video. When I have a video like that a lot of people comment on, I thought, oh my God, how am I ever going to follow that up? And I just thought, well, I'm not. So I'm just going to make this video today, not comparing it to that one. And I'm just going to end today, as I like to frequently, with the meta prayer, because it's so appropriate all the time. And especially at a time when there are entities that seek to separate us. We are really not separate. We're the same. And the more we focus on the separateness, the more we can find the differences or things we don't like, but we truly are all one, and the meta prayer speaks to that. So take a deep breath. In this version, there are many out there, but this one was taught to me many years ago by a yoga teacher that I had when I was actively doing yoga myself, but still relevant. So if you want to, close your eyes. May we be at peace. May we be at ease. May we be safe. May we be happy. May we know the beauty of our own true nature. May we be healed. And may we be a source for healing in the world. Thank you, everybody, for being here today. Usually I'm here in about 3 weeks, but in 3 weeks' time will be that Stitch With Me day, so I'm going to push it back to I'll see you at the end of August. And I always look forward to your kind comments and hearing what you have to say. Thank you so much for being here. I really do appreciate you so much. I appreciate you being there and for supporting me and everything that I'm doing, so I can bring some hopefully interesting things to you. So thank you, everybody. Namaste.